a memo, the size of government, exercise ahoro abai eye, argument ahoro abai say ye nyina anase oman yakọ ahonkyerem yes ye nyina ejiri say yakọ ahonkyerem na emom ekwan be na ebefa so na yatetete enema so ne nyina ye ka ho asa ba mpese quickly no ye tumirika komra hye bedwam your voice be the closing ends na minority leader ora to force eguso ene no kasa owi ana fei chairman of the committee ne dey we at the tail end no baby a ora to force ene no fa no energy contracts any payment any finance ministry who sikasem ne niema bia eye crucial na nso ka niema nkebe ka ho anaju ntam pesa yem fa that concluding stages of Anta anasa Dr. Amin Adam ne vetting ekoso ewo appointment committee enim ewo mrahye bedwam yenhwe se one Dr. Toforsen awia
and the government failed to take action. Is that what you are trying to say?
Omanfm.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not able to answer this. Let me ask her that.
Mr. Chairman, this is an important question. I'll reframe it. Mr. Chairman, is it possible that maybe the minister complied, sent it to cabinet because the law requires that the minister must prepare it and take it to cabinet, and that maybe can that be?
Maybe he is not a member of cabinet. He was not at the ministry, so it is not fair to ask him this question.
Have you visited the Ministry of Finance?
I go to the Ministry of Finance many times.
No, since your appointment, since your nomination.
Yes, I attended a meeting there on behalf of the Minister for Energy at the Ministry of Finance.
Have you had an opportunity to look at the fiscal strategy document of the government of Ghana?
Mr. Chairman, I have not looked at it.
Have you had a look at the Public Financial Management Act?
Oh,
Omanfm.
Those of you at the Finance Committee, were you aware?
So, can you agree with me that all the provisions that I have listed from the Constitution and the Public Financial Management Act provides Ghana enough requirement to ensure that our fiscal will not be where it is and our debt will be sustainable?
Mr. Chairman, I've said earlier that if there is any law that saw COVID happening, I'll be happy to see that law. And so as far as no law can do that, I'm wondering whether the minister would have, procured magic to know what was going to happen.
Honorable nominee, part of the reason why the cedi has depreciated in recent times is because of the reserves position, which has deteriorated significantly. Can you please explain to us what has accounted for this situation, despite the fact that IMF, within a period of 13 months, gave us $2 billion made up of $1 billion rapid credit facility and $1 billion of SDR, special drawing right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I know that the IMF supported Ghana. You mentioned $2 billion. But, Mr. Chairman, we also lost so much in revenue. For example, because of COVID, we lost more than $2 billion in revenue. And so if the IMF has supported us, we should not just be looking at what has come in. Let's look at what has gone out, what we have lost. Apart from the revenue that we lost, we also had to spend. And so the net fiscal impact of COVID alone, close to $4 billion US, if not more. And so, Mr. Chairman, the situation we find ourselves, as rightly said by him, could not be caused by us. If I make reference to the reserves that you talked about, 4.4 months of import cover by end of December 2021, 2.7 months of import cover by end of December 2022. We know what caused it. As a result of the Russia-Ukraine war, the transmission effect of that war came through trade. And we know that food prices increased substantially. In fact, to the extent that the increase in food prices was a 30-year high. Petroleum prices also increased as a result of the logistical challenges occasioned by the war. And so, Mr. Chairman, this also heightened inflationary pressures. And it is not only Ghana that is trying to address the inflation that affected our international reserves, because you have to continue to rely on your international reserves to support Ghana's international transaction as the cost of forex increased. And this is why our reserve has dwindled to about 2.7% to 2.7 months of import cover. So it is well known, unless you want to doubt it. But this is the main reason, and we all know that. And it's not only Ghana. Last week, the IMF managing director was in Germany, Munich, security conference. She alluded to this, and particularly mentioned Ghana, that Ghana was doing well before this disaster and the war between Ukraine and Russia happened. And so it is well known why we are in this state. And we need to come together as a people, as a country, to take our country out of these challenges. And so we need your support, your contributions, and your expertise to enable all of us build our country together.
Honorable nominee, are you aware that the COVID virus was a pandemic and that it did not only affect Ghana?
I'm aware.
And that within our West Africa sub-region, Ghana is not the only country that saw COVID and lockdowns.
I agree.
Do you know the inflation rate for our neighboring country like Togo and Ivory Coast and Nigeria?
I've not looked at the data.
Do you know the reserves level of Togo, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, or any other country in West Africa?
I've not looked at it.
I entreat you to look at those numbers as a nominee to the Ministry of Finance, as a Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance.
But, Mr. Chairman, curious, I don't know the basis for this, but if it is to say that because COVID affected every country, and so Ghana should not be in this, I have enumerated a number of reasons beyond COVID why we have these problems. I talked about COVID, I talked about the energy sector areas, I talked about the financial sector cleaning. And so if your basis is COVID, then that is flawed to begin with. Secondly, the economic structure of Ghana is not the same as Togo or Ivory Coast. For example, when you have a pegged exchange rate, which is the practice in those countries, the response of your economy to international events will not be the same as a country that has flexible exchange rates such as Ghana. And so the structure is not the same. And so to make such analysis, Mr. Chairman, I think that we need to look at it again.
Mr. Chairman, I mentioned Nigeria. Is Nigeria's exchange rate pegged?
Order, please. Order. Mr. Chairman, Nigeria has a flexible exchange rate. But what is the size of Nigeria's economy? There are economies that can absorb shocks more than others. We are a small open economy, and Rankin knows what I'm talking about. And so we can't make such comparison. It will be very flawed.
So the only country in our sub-region that is not resilient to COVID shock or Ukraine shock is Ghana.
There are countries that have even experienced the shocks more than Ghana. And this is why I'm saying that if we want to compare the impact on different countries, what will be the basis? What models have we run? Because economic structures differ from one country to another.
Honorable nominee, have you perchance looked at Earmarked Fund Capping and Realignment Act?
Mr. Chairman, I've not looked at it.
Are you aware of the Earmarked Funds Capping and Realignment Act?
I am aware of it.
Will you encourage your minister to continue with that act?
I think it is important to note that at the time this law came into being, we had cash flow problems. We inherited deficits that we needed to finance. The revenue was not much. And so government had to take innovative measures, including the earmarking of funds, the capping on the earmarked funds, which generated some revenue that the government used to be able to support the economy. I think that it is still necessary that we continue to rely on the revenue we generate from that. So I will not advise for the minister to stop the use of the law at this moment.
It was refreshing to hear from you this morning saying that Ghana should keep the Heritage Fund, in a question asked by Honorable Patrick Boama. I think it's Honorable Patrick Boama who asked you that question, yes, on the Heritage Fund. It was very refreshing to hear from you. But since your nomination to the Ministry of Finance, have you changed your position on the use of the Heritage Fund?
The question was whether the Heritage Fund should be spent. And I said, no, we need it. That was my answer.
So before
your
nomination, what was your position? Should it be spent or shouldn't be spent?
I never had contrary opposition on the Heritage Fund before my nomination.
It is refreshing to hear that from you. But honorable colleague,
in fact, Mr. Chairman, the work I did for the government, the NDC government at that time, you may not know, but the minister then knew the contributions I made to the development of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. One of the features of that act, which I supported, and I brought examples from other countries, was the Heritage Fund and the Stabilization Fund. And so when Parliament decided to amend the law, the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, the Finance Committee went to Akos Safari I was invited. And so it doesn't mean that the minister is not worried about the debts owed to our contractors. So whatever spending that is being done through this 2023 budget, I think is essential. You have difficulty sacrificing one aspect of our spending needs for another. And so I stand by my earlier proposition that we will have to generate more revenue. All of us will have to make the efforts. Ghanaians should pay their taxes so that we can be able to take on these bills, particularly from those who are helping us build the road network of our country.
Have you quantified the expenditure reduction measures in the budget? And how much is it?
Mr. Chairman, I have not.
Can you mention some of the expenditure reduction measures in the budget?
Mr. Chairman, and in this I want to refer to the specific as provided in the budget. Migrate, number one, Mr. Chairman, and I'm referring to what was provided for in the budget.
You are referring to which paragraph in the budget?
I don't have the budget statement. I have an extract. Migrate all earmarked funds onto the GiftMix platforms and ensure they use the GiftMix platform to process all their revenue and expenditure transactions. Number two, continue with 30% cut in the salaries of the president, vice president, ministers, deputy ministers, etc. Place a cap on salary adjustment of SOEs to be lower than negotiated. Negotiate public sector wage adjustment within the context of burden sharing, particularly an ability to pay. manage public sector hiring within budgetary constraints, MDAs and MMDAs and SOEs directed to reduce fuel allocations to political appointees and heads of MDAs, MMDAs and SOEs by 50%. The directive applies to all methods of fuel allocation, including coupons, electronic cards, cheat system, and fuel depots. A ban is placed on the use of V8 or its equivalent, except for cross-country level. Only essential official foreign travels across government, including SOEs, shall be allowed. As far as possible, meetings and workshops should be held within the official environment of government facilities so that you do not go renting spaces in hotels. Government-sponsored external training and staff development activities at the Office of the President, ministries and SOEs. And so there are a host of them that were provided for in the budget, in the 2023 budget, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable nominee, have you quantified these measures?
I've already answered that I have not quantified the measure.
Do you know of the quantum of tax exemptions this country grants annually?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. I haven't seen the data.
Will you agree with me that it is a major drain to our tax revenue?
I agree, Mr. Chairman. And this is why the government, I think, is bringing a bill. You know, yes, the bill is actually it's been passed into law, you know, to address this problem, Mr. Chairman.
And you agree with me that if we are to block these tax exemptions, our tax to GDP alone can go up by at least 2%.
I know that our tax to GDP will grow, but not sure about 2% because I haven't run any model.
Honorable nominee, you know there is a limit. There's a limit in which you can tax the ordinary Ghanaian.
I know, but what would be that limit, if you could help me?
You know that the ordinary Ghanaian is already paying inflation tax at 54%.
Omanfm.
Do you know that inflation is a tax, honorable nominee?
You may want to explain to me.
Inflation reduces the disposable income of the ordinary Ghanaian. And so the higher the inflation, like any tax, which reduces the disposable income, it is a tax.
I don't agree, Mr. Chairman.
Well, economists describe inflation as a tax, and inflation is a tax. You can Google it. You can Google it.
Mr. Chairman, I know that inflation reduces the value of money, but I don't know that inflation is a tax.
Honorable nominee.
So that if inflation is a tax in this country, Parliament has to approve taxes. Has inflation been approved by our Parliament?
Honorable nominee, inflation reduces the disposable income of any person. The higher the inflation is regarded as a tax by economists. Any fiscal economist will tell you that inflation is a tax. There are a number of literatures on it. There are a number of literatures on it. I'll call the literature.
Mr. Chairman, I will consult my brother for some material to understand this better. I will appreciate that.
Honorable nominee, to conclude on my vetting for today, to conclude, Well, I can do more. If you want more, I can do more.
No, the second file.
To conclude on your vetting for today. In view of the economic crisis we are facing as a country, what immediate expenditure cut would you recommend to government to signal to the ordinary Ghanaian that is made to endure inflation at 54%, to endure lending rate in the 40s? The very Ghanaian, the ordinary Ghanaian, who has to be called upon to contribute in terms of taxes, the very ordinary Ghanaian who has been called upon to share part of his or her interest on bonds and extension of the maturity of his or her bonds, what can government do immediately to signal burden sharing? To signal burden sharing.
Mr. Chairman, the minister announced expenditure reducing measures in the 2023 budget, and the government has started implementing that immediately. And so I support fully those expenditure measures. But Mr. Chairman, we are not here because somebody has mismanaged the economy. We all know that even before COVID, our economy was on track. We were growing at an average of 6%. Inflation was low. Interest rates were low. We were investing in education, in energy, in health infrastructure. And therefore, the challenges that we are faced with as a country will not crash Ghana down. The President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is providing that strong leadership with policies that requires all of us to make sacrifices. Because when we are in good times, we all benefit. And when we are in bad times, it should be our responsibility as a nation to come together and work together to relieve the pain on our country. And so, I want to invite my colleagues on the other side and all Ghanaians to support our president, to bear with our circumstances in order for us to bring our economy back on track. This economy will recover. I see light at the end of the tunnel. And when this economy recovers, Ghanaians will know that they had strong leadership in this country. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable nominee, you said this economy will recover. It is our hope that our economy recovers. And obviously, it is the benefit of all of us to get Ghanaian economy to recover. But you are in government today. You should lead the way. Signal to the people of Ghana that you are ready to do the heavy liftings and bear the consequences and not to cosmetically cover it. We are ready to assist government to fix it, providing the government of the day leads the way. I conclude. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Finally, we're all tired, but I'll ask two questions. The ranking member asked you that the finance minister has proposed expenditure of 83 billion cedis. Now, that 83 billion cedis, broken down into the respective department, ministries, and agencies, does each one of them have sufficient allocation to perform the functions for which they are set up? Reading from the budget.
No, Mr. Chairman. And I can give examples from the Ministry of Energy, where our budget was cut and cut and cut because we don't have sufficient budget to meet all the needs of the ministries.
Now, one last question. The Vice Deputy Ranking asked a question that
Omanfm.
is it 2.
I tell for good to tea balling pony. I deviate Dr. Muhammad Amin Adam. Ne vetting no way Honorable Joe Osewusu. A first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, any chairman of Parliamentary Appointment Committee. In the Honorable Joe Osewusu, earlier Joe Weiss, or no, or then a question say Chato Edema Ora Amin Adam Nafi Yatoju Medinoson.
That was going to be spent will mean that the other will not be recorded in the accounts of Get Fund. It will, but as arrears. And we know that arrears clearance does not start from now. Several earmarked funds have significant arrears. And to the extent that the government is committed to clearing those arrears as revenue flows increase, I think that the government is doing the right thing.
Very well. Thank you for attending upon the House to answer questions. Thank you. Before I discharge you, unfortunately, I don't have all the names of the eminent chiefs that came to support you. But I wish to take advantage of this occasion to thank all of you.
Yes. Sasuba can say na so. And intino ya de Dr. Muhammad Amin Adam. I am nominating as Minister of State or called Minister of Finance. No, the vetting process. No, we say Chairman of the committee, Honorable Joe Osewusu, Member of Parliament for Bekwai, or the proceedings. The eba na ya pesi me just say one nominee wache pa like what na committee na anymore ache because we abra or start here no besi sabria we twa 4 hours or more. Yes, we twa 4 hours or more na ne vetting nso ye deep wa kire nso say wonya brewa ba irajo na na mo zanim Dr. Case ato forcing or see inflation ye tax number inflation tax no ye jijema hwan
sir ituama hwan ano na ye kan sesi ana maybe say ituama hwan because say inflation aba na ye mfa ne say inflation ye 1% na kire say umami 1 cedi na say me de koto ade a eso ate by 1%. But that 1% is the real value of the money, no. So me ko to adia so at na hoden aba form no. And ko bia ho. Tax nso de anka yetuama ekobabi ana yetuama nipa ana yetuama institution ana yetuama aban. Yetuama American institution is a bit ma ba say wako assembly. Ganof Municipal Assembly. Oko yewo yewo permit and I say oko tia business operating permit fee.
Yeah.
So
and a vehicle
bibi ubako tia Ganof.
Yes.
Ntia ko bi
and our property rate and our bibi I wouldn't be utia mano
but all kasano tie say or say there are so many theories surrounding it. Now there's another argument, sound argument, or no so can say inflation yet tax.
Now wait there.
There's another
Fine,
one.
Obi anim say
Also,
inflation was right. Emma sika ukra wodne na ochina.
Mudro no
Adia
form.
No more said to define it as a tax, and I had no or better intellectual argument, and I say, but then no, I was the name of Samba Quay Beshe. Any state suggestions. Any nipa bi baby omugina se Oman no ahokyeraba na bare esese ote eka oboso abatene spending so na what area omodo omo ani asi and say yente the size of government so enti the size of government na yente so no the omo kan no omo de buy some bonus say abai empty number of ministers so na ense misanso ho omo kan sa na omo kan bone of course efficiency ni say ubetimi de even a fewer numbers. One of the definitions or concept of efficiency is say ubetimi de fewer people achieve the same results. I don't know, and also the one be perform task and kini padodo ebe perform. Nature say who use lesser resources, human resource or whatever. And intino so we cost cut ministers do so one share bonesa. Na but then say misa wa ho ne say sie nyina nim se e de ka. Niente the size of government so. You can the size of government